Hi everyone, welcome back to the PM Schools YouTube channel. Today I'm delighted to have a very special guest, Romina, with us in our Talk to Leaders series. And today we are picking up a very interesting topic. But before that, Romina, welcome to our channel. Thank you so much for coming here. How are you doing?
Fine, I'm very excited, Khanjan, to be joining this community in India and helping new product managers, entrepreneurs to cope with all the position and the role and situations.
Yes, I'm sure it'll be really full perspective that they would get by you coming over. Romina, so quickly, please introduce yourself in your own words and then we can get into the conversation ahead.
Okay, so I'm a senior product manager and I've been focusing in APIs and payments, but also in SaaS solutions. So it's product management from a very technical engineering perspective since almost 6 years. And now I'm trying to help and mentor new product managers and the beginning of this journey because it's a very challenging position and you need to be prepared. And I think that if you manage with this role and you actually succeed, you can become everything you want after this role. And you can even, it's the first step for a lot of entrepreneurs or CEOs in the future. So I hope that really my experience can help new beginners and entrepreneurs to understand better the role, especially now that it's much needed now with the remote and all the transition into online channels.
Yes, very, very relevant for us, I'm sure. So, Romina, today I decided that because you have a very diverse set of experience and you might have come across a lot of conflicts in both your career as well as you mentor people. So, they might have come to you for guidance on the conflicts that they faced. So, just wanted to know what kind of conflicts do you think a product manager witnesses in their professional career and yeah, like if you can just throw light on what different stakeholders can also be involved in these kind of conflicts.
Yes, of course. First of all, Kanjan, thank you for the question. I think it's a very needed question to answer. As you all may know, product management, and it's a famous structure image that you can see that the product manager is always in the middle between UX, technology or engineers, and business, right? So that means that you will have conflict with everyone at the same time. But the type of conflict is different according to the team that you are approaching and addressing. So it's very important to use the proper language and understand the different problems that may arise in different departments and how to cope with them differently.
Yeah.
So, for example, a conflict with technology and engineers, it's very famous now with product management because you can find this different way of working since, I mean, first of all, you don't need to be a programmer or a technical person because there's a myth actually that you need to be technical to do product management. And I can guarantee that I'm an engineer and you don't need to be technical. You need to understand how to cope with technical problems.
Right.
So, for example, in my case, it was very frustrating to actually implement methodologies and define because engineers, a lot of times, they are very autonomous
Hmm.
and they like to work independently. So it's very important to communicate with them and make clear what is your position. You're
Yeah.
not trying to be a police
Hmm.
or to micromanage the team. Actually, you want to help them to structure better their sprints and
Yeah.
work and actually to be able to communicate better also among them. As you know, back end, front end, QA, full stack, you have different kind of roles in a technical team. And sometimes they don't even communicate each other, but they need each other. So as a product manager, implementing this technology and actually proving them that it's better for them and being friendly and always trying to have a lot of meetings and knowing how to communicate, not in a micromanagement approach, but also as a friend. I really think it helps a lot. And also being able to define the user stories properly. So all the definition part must be in a very high quality. So in this way, you gain the trust of engineers. That would be, for example, from the technical side.
Hmm.
If we talk from a business perspective, most of you, business perspective always comes from your boss or from directors or board members. And it's very important to make the right questions, right? Most of them, they are focused on revenue, income, and business. And you may be intimidated by the position
Yeah.
into I don't know, breaking your roadmap in order to do what business says. But if you think about it, it breaks your commitment with engineers and technology.
Right.
So in the end, that could backfire your relationship with the technical team, and you need them for everything. So you need to be fair with everyone. So you need to ask the right questions to the business side and try to make them understand that if the technical depth or the roadmap is not followed, potentially it will be also bad for them in order to bring this revenue and growth that they are focusing in.
Yeah.
Because technical depth is related directly to revenue.
Hmm.
If you don't solve technical requirements, you won't be able to add new features to the product because in the end, it will backfire everyone. So it's very important to be super clear, to learn how to say no when you must, and actually that makes you have this respectful, attitude towards all the teams, and also to be perceived in the same way, and force everyone to stick to the roadmap.
Right.
And yeah, to finish with the UX team, I think it's the most friendly department that you can find. But still, you need to know and understand the tools that they are using,
Hmm.
because it's very delicate. Some product managers, they even cross the borders and they even become UX. And it's very common for a product manager to even go to some UX context in which it's not actually your work, and actually can even intimidate the UX team
Right.
because it's their job to define the end-to-end process from a UI or UX perspective. But what you can do as a product manager is to define user journeys focused only on products. So for that, you need to use specific tools for process and flow charts. But try not to use design tools
Hmm.
because that breaks the boundaries between departments. And you need to be fair, as I said, Khanjan, with the three teams, right? So
Yeah.
building this equilibrium, this balance, actually, I think it's the successful way of communicating, and also in a corporate level to be able to cope with the growth and stakeholders.
Right. Very, very aptly put. So you covered actually a lot of different points, right? So I'd just like to probably pick up some pointers from there and stress a bit more on that. So, how do you think that a product manager should communicate, right? So, is it more wise when in times of conflict? Is it wise to first, understand viewpoints from different stakeholders in silo and then bring them all on the table? Or do you think transparency should always be the priority, and a product manager sitting in between all of this should ensure that everybody who is in that conflicting situation comes in one point and tries to get it resolved? What do you think is a better approach?
I would say, Kanchan, from my perspective, I would always go for individual meetings
Okay.
because there are several factors that when you put different people together,
Hmm.
communication can be very frustrating, especially if you don't know how those people are going to act in the meeting.
Sure.
So potentially what usually happens is, according to your level of management, you can actually influence the meeting in a wrong way, even if it's not your intention. So let's put an example, right?
Hmm.
Let's say that your boss is from the business side,
Yeah.
and you have the tech lead,
Hmm.
which of course it's in a lower management level,
Hmm.
and you are three discussing something essential.
Hmm.
What could happen is that the feedback from the technical side, it won't be so transparent because you're influenced by the management level.
Hmm.
Instead, if you, of course, it means that it has to be more work from the product management side because you will need to set up individual one-to-one meetings, which
Hmm.
I think it's very important because in that meeting you can actually gain the transparent insight,
Hmm.
challenge that insight, and once you make sure that it makes sense, you can actually build the storytelling
Hmm.
and have the next meeting with the other side. And with that, you can actually finish the puzzle. In the end, of course, once you've done this meeting and arranged some conclusions,
Hmm.
then maybe it makes more sense to bring everyone together and say, because that's transparency, of course, hey guys, after talking to the different departments, these are the feasible conclusions for everyone. What do you think? And let's move onwards, from this point. But I would say that would be the last step to put everyone together, especially if you are in remote now.
Fair enough. That actually brings me to my next point, which is that, and I have faced this because I joined, like my onboarding was a remote process. So, what happens is that if something is not in writing, it is as good as not being there at all, right? Because you are having personal Zoom calls. Sometimes you are communicating on, let's say, an email or maybe Slack or some professional communication tool. So, what do you think is the importance of documentation and communication of that documentation, or rather not communication but sharing of that documentation in the current scenario from a product manager's lens?
Yeah, I would say, Khanjan, that documents are sacred as a product manager. It's actually your certification
Hmm.
on how things should work
Yeah.
because the words in a meeting they can get lost and then it can actually lead to conflict, like I didn't say that, you understood me wrong.
Hmm.
So for me, I feel it's, again, it's more work from a product management perspective,
Hmm.
but still it will save you a lot of trouble if you always make sure to have minutes after every meeting.
Yeah.
And how to write minutes, because you need to really write down what you've been discussing,
Hmm.
which are the next actions, include every member involved in the loop of the email, and make sure that everyone agrees with that. Then follow up using that email and writing the next email with the updates.
Hmm.
Even though sometimes it may be redundant,
Yeah.
I think it saves you a lot of trouble in the future. Also, having product documentation requirements defined and updated, it's also necessary because when you define a feature before developing, even though you use Agile, Kanban, Scrum, before that, there's a lot of definition which depends on stakeholders.
Yeah.
So in this document, product documentation requirement, we say the PDR, the famous PDR, I think it's very necessary because you need to establish a kickoff meeting, a
Hmm.
follow up, the groomings for the sprints, and everything will rely on your PDR, where you have all the requirements approved by business, approved by technical leaders, and with the UX wireframes attached. So imagine this structure, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And actually, once you collect all this information, and actually in this document, you only collect that information that it's already aligned and agreed. It's not to be discussed. So once you have that, you share that in a meeting with the relevant people, and then you write the minutes. And once you have that, it's like a green light.
Yeah.
After that, of course, this is also the roadmap is in the PDR included. You start the sprint and you don't look back. You move forward.
And gives a clear picture also into what essentially also is a product manager's day-to-day role. So even picture was painted well.
And
Um,
also, Kanchan, just
yeah.
to add, using the right documentation, you reduce a lot of amount of meetings
Yes.
because
Precisely.
there's a lot of complaints that there's a lot of meetings for product roles,
Yeah.
but this helps actually to avoid misunderstandings and meetings.
Yes, I completely support that. And also, the company that I work for, we are very big on documentation. So, as you said, documents are sacred. We call them our Bible. And of course, as a product manager, it is a struggle to write high quality documents. And I think it's like an ongoing, ever continuing kind of a struggle. Nobody is perfect at it, but it definitely helps put a very good argument, at least in the conflicting situations. My next question is, Romina, around the expectation mismatch, right? So sometimes resolving conflicts is really not possible because different stakeholders from different departments, irrespective of their hierarchy, have different ways of approaching certain product builds, right? So for example, there might be tech team which looks at the design components or the design system in a very different lens, and the UX team has their own view of how the customer should be experiencing a product, right?
Mhm.
So in that case, how does a product manager really, of course, talking to each stakeholder and getting their viewpoints and then bringing them to one table is there, but what is the one way in which we can arrive at a final solution which is agreeable by all stakeholders?
Actually, Kanchan, the answer is complex and simple at the same time. And I would say you need to understand, and that takes time, why there's a preference for a specific method.
Hmm.
It could be technical, it could be UX, it could be business.
Yeah.
Why I say it's easy and complex? Because to understand, you need to learn and you need to have a basic knowledge
Hmm.
as a product manager of the things, right? Because it doesn't make sense if you ask, for example, the technical team, why do you want to use this type of infrastructure? If you don't understand what it's all about, right? So first, make sure that you have the basic knowledge of each department that actually gives you a bit of freedom and flexibility to challenge departments. Otherwise, your position is weak. So for me, I would say the first step is to learn about the tools that your teams are using,
Hmm.
even go out of the box and be present in the market. Competitors,
Yeah.
what are they doing in every aspect, right? Learn about the latest technology, latest tools for UX, latest user journeys. Have your own research, learn about your tools within your organization, and ask why. And until you don't understand that, keep on asking. Because it's very important as a product manager when, for example, a conflict may arise to be able to defend the decision,
Yes.
right? So for me, that's the best way to approach the situation with the knowledge and understanding why. And if with that you align yourself with the decision made from the UX part, it's because actually you have the arguments to defend it.
Right. Yeah, very fair points. So, Ramina, just to like probably summarize the main pointers that you have already stated, I would probably just take a stab at it, and then we can close with some of the additional so-called tips that you would like to give our PM aspirants to approach conflicts. So, you sort of touched upon the importance of having a very tight knit kind of a documentation in place, making sure that you interact with all different stakeholders, understand their stories, and understand why they are advocating what they are advocating, and then sort of having all that information before you bring everybody to one common table. You also stressed on the importance of minutes of meetings and then following up on whatever has been agreed upon, which I completely stand by also. And then you touched upon how different stakeholders might be having different expectations, and how you should be having your own opinions, or rather your own backing in terms of knowledge and research data, so that you can probably have some kind of a conclusion to this particular conflict, right? So apart from all of this, any pointers, any tips that you would give, maybe like a toolkit, a safety toolkit to aspiring PMs, that they can always do these, let's say, top 5 things to ensure that they are well prepared for a
Yeah.
conflict, because they cannot avoid conflicts, but they should be well prepared for it.
Yeah, I would say, Khanjan, that as a product manager, I would strongly recommend to be a person that actually acts like a wall between this triangle. And what does it mean that? Actually, it means that if something happens, like we can experience a delay, things can happen last minute, something breaks, then you have to communicate that to the client, to your boss. So I would say try always not to point out who did it, who did what, and try to invest time in finding, who's guilty of what. If you try not to expose the
Yeah.
teams
Yeah.
rather than try to act as a team and actually involve yourself as a part of what happened. So once you act like a wall and say, okay, this happened, and maybe you're communicating that to the business department, like we are having a delay of 1 month because this has happened, always include yourself. Like we will solve it, and the tech team and myself are already solving that, and we are taking the right solutions. That's a professional approach, not to expose any team, because you need to act all together. And also regarding that, if something last minute happens, of course, I mean, you need to trust the team that actually they've tried enough to solve that, but still you need to understand what happened, why it happened, and how can you solve that for the next event, right? So having this feedback loop, a bit of a retrospective in the sprint, it's essential because you cannot make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
At least you need to control what's controllable by you, right? So that would be the first thing. And then I would say product managers right now, it could be a quite a lonely position because you are with everyone, but at the same time, you cannot share how you're feeling, right? And that's challenging. I mean, you need to be strong and you need to have emotional intelligence. Because if you have a bad day, and I'm sure that a lot of product managers watching this video can understand that if you have a bad day, you need to still act positive because you are the referral of the team in every aspect of motivation. So it could be quite overwhelming as a human point of view. So I would always encourage to follow product management communities in which
Sure.
you can actually share what you're feeling, frustrations, and be, sharing that with people that actually can understand you.
Yeah.
Because even though you are surrounded by different teams, it's a different position and they cannot understand you in the same way as another product manager.
True.
So I would always recommend to seek out communities, reach out for feedback, and even have a coffee with different product managers in the community to actually just release yourself and be human and just share, right? So I would say these two things are very important, and actually they need each other, because if you commit yourself into acting as a wall and being very fair, then of course there's a part of you that needs to, release.
Yeah,
And that's the part that actually you can reach to communities and have their feedback on situations.
very true. Yeah, you actually touched upon the product manager's feelings as well, and I think that is also very important because we as product managers are trained to be very thick-skinned, and we have to become that eventually in the process. But then the human aspects of it always kick in, and that's where sometimes motivation might go away if things get too conflicting at work. So yeah, Romina, this was a very insightful conversation for me as well, and I'm sure the viewers would have enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much for doing this, and we
Thank you.
hope we can have you in future videos talking about different other aspects of product management as well. For all the viewers, Romina is actually into mentoring and guiding aspirants and existing PMs, so I will link her coordinates in the description box, and you can ask any questions that you have in the comment section to me or Romina. Please subscribe to our channel for more such videos. Thank you so much, Romina. Have a great day.
Thank you, Khanjan. Have a nice day.